Yo, what's good, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel, and in this video, I'm going to give you my top starts of the week for Week 14 of the 2022 Fantasy Football season. It's a big week for a lot of you out there, I'm sure, with the fantasy playoffs right around the corner, so we're going to try to nail our start-sit calls in this video. With that being said, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and let's get right into my top starts of the week. We're going to start at the quarterback position, where I want to bring up Jared Goff. So in these videos, I'm not going to try to tell you to start guys like Patrick Mahomes, or, Josh Jacobs, guys who are just on fire, that are pretty much auto starts at this point. I'm going to try to give you some advice that's a little bit more helpful. So I'm going to go with Jared Goff, quarterback of the Detroit Lions. He has been amazing at home this season, and in Week 14, he gets to take on my Minnesota Vikings at home. Not only is he at home in an environment where he plays well for fantasy, but the Minnesota Vikings are a great matchup for fantasy quarterbacks, I'm sad to admit as a Vikings fan, but it is true. And he's got the weapons with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I wouldn't be surprised if DJ Chark got loose for some big plays in this game as well. So Jared Goff is a nice, solid start with some upside if this game becomes a shootout. My next quarterback start of the week is Kirk Cousins of my Minnesota Vikings. So he's taking on the Detroit Lions. They've been playing better as a team lately, but I just like this game because I think it has the potential to be a high-scoring game. And Kirk Cousins has been pretty solid for fantasy this year. So again, he's not a Mahomes level play, but if you're looking for a nice solid option, I think Kirk Cousins could be your guy. And same thing with Jared Goff. If this game is a high scoring affair, that just increases his upside that much more. Now we're going to move on to the running back position, where I'm going to talk about Joe Mixon, running back of the Cincinnati Bengals. I like him as a nice little start of the week in Week 14 against the Cleveland Browns. So the Cleveland Browns are a great matchup for fantasy running backs. In Week 8 against this same team, the Cleveland Browns had a surprise upset win, and actually a pretty dominant win at that against the Bengals. But in Week 14, I think things will be different. The Bengals are at home, and I think that they will get the win over the Browns in this one. I think it should be a good game script for the Bengals to be able to kind of run the ball, especially down the stretch of this game. And Joe Mixon is returning from injury. I'd be a little bit more worried if it was something like a hamstring injury he was returning from, where they're probably more likely to limit his touches. But he is coming back from a concussion. So sure, Samaje Perine, who's been playing well in Mixon's absence, he might see, a handful of touches here and there because, Samaje Perine will be involved, obviously. But I think Mixon will come back and be the main focal point of the running game. And it's a good matchup, like I said. So I would fire up Joe Mixon confidently in Week 14. All right, now I'm going to go with a dynamic duo of running backs for my next start of the week. I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, running backs of the Dallas Cowboys. So this is all about the matchup, okay? Ezekiel Elliott actually has surprisingly been very effective for fantasy. He's been getting in the end zone quite a bit. 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 1 touchdown. I actually traded him away after this Detroit Lions game for Dallas Goedert, and I wish I had Ezekiel Elliott because I need running back help this week, and Dallas Goedert has been injured for the last month or so. So I'm really sad that I did that, but I'm trying to not be biased here. I have to admit that Zeke is a good play in Week 14 against the Houston Texans. They are one of the best matchups in all of fantasy for running backs. They are actually historically bad in terms of how bad their rushing defense is. So Ezekiel Elliott, who's been playing well for fantasy, I expect the Cowboys to put up a lot of points. It's a great matchup. I see no reason why you would want to sit Zeke unless you have an absolutely stacked running back room, or you have like a wide receiver 1 type of flex, just had a crazy draft or something like that. And then Tony Pollard, same thing as Zeke. He's been playing well for fantasy. He's got that big play ability. And I don't see how you sit him with how well he's been playing, especially against this Houston Texans defense. I did trade away Tony Pollard years ago in Dynasty for a 3rd-round pick. That 3rd-round pick turned into Anthony McFarland. So again, I wish I could say Anthony McFarland was going to go off, but I'm pretty sure he's like a 3rd or 4th string running back for the Steelers. So I wish I had Tony Pollard on my team in my Dynasty League as well. I don't, but I would recommend that you start him if you do have him on your squad. The only worry in this game is that the Cowboys will dominate so early that Zeke and Pollard won't really need to be used much in the second half. But still, I think they're going to put up points at least in the first half. And I don't think it's like that they're going to be benched in the 3rd quarter. So if the Cowboys are up big, even as early as the 3rd quarter, I think that'll just mean that they're going to run the ball even that much more in the second half. And we might see Zeke or Pollard kind of pulled early if the Cowboys are able to dominate, which I expect them to do. But in order to dominate, these players do have to put up points. So I think Zeke and Pollard are very safe at the very least, and they do have big upside if they get in the end zone or hit on some big plays. Another little duo that I have here, I'm not as excited for this duo as I am for Zeke and Pollard, but I still think they're worth mentioning if you are in a pinch at the running back spot, and that is Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert of the Miami Dolphins. So they're a nice little dynamic duo here in the backfield, and they are taking on the Chargers. I'm not sure why it doesn't say that right here, but they're taking on the Chargers, who do not have a very good run defense. I expect this game to be high scoring. Last week against the 49ers, they just kind of shut down the run game. Not even a lot of attempts in the running game. But if you're desperate, if you need a flex or maybe even a running back too, with the bye weeks that are going on, I know in one league I'm going to be without Aaron Jones and Jonathan Taylor, and Kenneth Walker is, he's kind of a game time decision as of this recording on December 10th, 8 p.m. I also lost Javonte Williams in that league, and that is the league where I also traded away Ezekiel Elliott. So I'm in shambles, but I don't have Jeff Wilson, and if I did, I would probably be starting him. Same with Raheem Mostert. It's kind of hard to tell who is going to do well for fantasy on a given week. Jeff Wilson had a little stretch there. He was kind of dominating, but we'll see. I think both are okay plays. Again, not top-end running back one plays, but it's a good matchup, and they're guys that you can start if needed. Then I'm sorry, my last running back start of the week. I don't care if it's too obvious. It's going to be Rhamondre Stevenson of the Patriots. I love this guy. I tried trading for him in Dynasty, and I couldn't quite get a deal done. I should have offered more because he's been awesome for fantasy, and I think he's worth bringing up because the last 3 weeks he's been solid for fantasy, 11.2, 15.7, 10.8 and half PPR, but he hasn't quite had a running back one performance, top 12, since week 9. But this is the type of player that even though he hasn't had that explosive week in a while, you still have to get him into your lineups. I can't imagine you're sitting Rhamondre Stevenson, but if you were thinking about it, this is just your message that he is pretty much a lineup lock, about as safe as it gets, and he does have upside. We saw in week 6 and 7, he was the running back 2, the running back 6 in those weeks. He does have 20-point upside in this good matchup with the Arizona Cardinals. Whether it's a competitive game or not, I think Rhamondre Stevenson will be used, and I don't expect the Cardinals to blow out the Patriots. But Rhamondre Stevenson is used in the running game. He's used in the passing game, and last I heard, Damian Harris, it's looking like he's not going to play, and even if he does play, Stevenson has taken over this backfield. So fire up Rhamondre Stevenson. He is essentially a must start. I don't like to use that term because it really depends on your team, but for 90+% of teams, he's a lineup lock. And then I do want to bring up the Seattle Seahawks backfield very quickly. It is definitely a mess right now. It's a little bit murky, but I just want to let you guys know that there is potentially some opportunity here. So they're dealing with a ton of injuries, but as you can see here, Kenneth Walker, he's dealing with an injury. Last I heard, he's going to be a game-time decision against the Carolina Panthers, who are a pretty good matchup for fantasy running backs. So if Kenneth Walker is active and he's not on a snap count, I would still play him with confidence. But if he is out, DJ Dallas, Travis Homer are going to be the next running backs up. So just monitor the news, see what the deal is. If there is one running back of that trio that kind of, it's like, hey, this guy's healthy, the other guys are not. They're going to be out or very limited, and this one guy is going to be the lead dog. I think between Travis Homer and DJ Dallas, you could start those guys in a pinch. Obviously, if Kenneth Walker plays, he's going to be sort of that every week start that you would normally expect, unless obviously he's limited or anything like that on a snap count. But I just kind of want to bring it up. I'm not necessarily saying one player right now as of this recording is going to dominate, just because we still don't know who is going to play and not play. But just monitor that situation, and you could get some value out of that Seattle Seahawks backfield. So while I'm talking about that Seattle Seahawks backfield, that just kind of tells you, man, they might have to throw the ball a little bit in this game, and that's very good for the wide receivers for Seattle. So we're going to move on to our wide receiver starts of the week, and I'm going to go with another duo, a common theme in this video. But I'm going to go with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I won't have too many wide receivers. I know I had a lot of running backs. I'll try to keep it short with the receivers here. But DK Metcalf and Lockett have both been great for fantasy. I was a little nervous about them heading into the year, but Geno Smith, their quarterback, has been playing really well, surprisingly, and he's been doing it all season. And against the Carolina Panthers, if their backfield is a little bit banged up, I think that they might need to rely on the passing game a little bit more. And it's not like the Panthers are this, top tier matchup in terms of points allowed to wide receivers, but I don't think that they're going to be locking anyone down too much. So I think DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett can both get loose, and they've been playing well for fantasy. DK Metcalf was one of my favorite draft values heading into the year, and he has been very, very solid for fantasy. He usually gets it done to a certain extent most weeks. Obviously not like this top 3, top 5 type of option, but a nice solid wide receiver too so far. And then surprisingly, Tyler Lockett, he has also been great for fantasy. I did have the opportunity to trade for him in Dynasty before the year started. There was a team that was very much so rebuilding, and they were trying to get rid of Lockett, but no one really took the bait. But I wish I had, because he's been great for fantasy. He's been in the end zone each of the last 5 games. He had a little stretch there where he had a few games only seeing 5 targets. But luckily, he's seen 7 and 12 targets the last couple weeks. So in week 14, I'm hoping he sees closer to 12 targets. And hopefully he keeps that touchdown streak going. I think I am playing against Lockett in another league. So I guess in that situation, I wouldn't want him to score. But just thinking about it from a logical perspective, I think he is a very solid bet to have a nice performance for fantasy. So I'd fire both of them up. And my next wide receiver start of the week is Jeudy of the Denver Broncos. This is one of the most surprising offenses of the year. I thought they were going to be so good with Russell Wilson coming into town. Jeudy, Cortland Sutton were going to be amazing. But Russ just has not been vintage Russell Wilson, and their offense has struggled mightily. Their defense is great, but their offense just can't get it done. They should be a playoff team. If their offense was even somewhat competent, they'd be in the playoffs. But unfortunately, it just hasn't been a good year for them. But I still think there is fantasy relevance to be had for Jeudy. Cortland Sutton is not going to play in this game, and they're taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. So there's one less mouth to feed with Sutton not playing. And Jeudy has had his moments this year where he's been solid for fantasy. I think Russell Wilson kind of looks to him. He has missed a few games lately, but I think in week 14, he's a week back from that injury, and I think he will be utilized heavily in this game because I think he's going to have to be. I know the Broncos defense is great, but the Chiefs are going to score on this team, and I don't think the Broncos are going to score too many points. So I do think they'll be trailing in this game. They'll have to keep up, and Jeudy will see a lot of those targets as they have to air it out a little bit, trying to kind of keep up with this Chiefs offense. And above that, even if it is a close game, the Chiefs are a good matchup for fantasy. They've been giving up points to wide receivers. So, again, not telling you to start guys like Devontae Adams and Justin Jefferson, but if you're looking for someone, a little further down the line, there's injuries. There's quite a few teams on bye this week. In week 14, for some reason, a week when people need a win to get into the playoffs, NFL. Why are we doing this? But I have a team, that team I was mentioning with all my running back injuries and bye weeks, where if I had Jeudy, I would be firing him up. I don't have him in that league. Wish me luck, but I would start Jeudy with some confidence. Now, at tight end, I have quite a few options. I'm just going to give you a handful of guys that I think you can start this week. So I'm going to kind of go down the list. TJ Hockenson of my Minnesota Vikings is the first option. You're probably starting him already. After I talk about Hockenson, I'll give you some more low-key options. But if you don't think Hockenson is like an auto start at this point, I would urge you to put him into that category. I know for fantasy, he hasn't been like a top 3 option or anything like that in terms of fantasy finish. But each week, he is seeing a very healthy target share with the Minnesota Vikings. Since week 9, which is when he's come over to the Minnesota Vikings, he's seen 9, 10, 9, 6 targets. He just hasn't had that big game, but at the tight end position, it's very hard to find production. And I'm not going to, pick up like an Evan Ingram type and start him over TJ Hockenson. So if you have him, unless you have like a Kelsey or maybe a Mark Andrews, then I would be starting TJ Hockenson. But even with Mark Andrews, like Hockenson is, I'd say he's a little bit behind Andrews in a vacuum. I'd have to really think about it, but Hockenson is right there, sort of that tier behind Kelsey. And that's not saying too much, just because tight end is very ugly. Like the tier from Kelsey to the next tier is very wide right now. So I'm not, but that's just kind of what it is this year. There's just nothing really crazy behind Kelsey. But next up, this is a little bit more of a streaming option if you're desperate. But Hunter Henry against the Cardinals, I think you could do worse than this. This is definitely just a play where you're hoping he gets in the end zone. Like he did in week 12, where he was 3 for 63 and a touchdown, was a tight end 3. And I believe in that game, there was a controversial touchdown, no touchdown call where it was literally like a millimeter away. So he almost had a couple touchdowns and a really big performance. But in week 14, tight end is disgusting. It's not like, I'm jumping out of my chair. Let's go. Hunter Henry's in my lineup. But I'm trying to give you guys a little bit of helpful advice. So I think he's a nice streaming option. It's a great matchup for tight ends. The Cardinals bleed points to tight end. So I would feel pretty confident starting Hunter Henry if you're in a pinch. Next up, I'm going to go with Pat Freiermuth. I started Foster Moreau on Thursday night. Got me a goose. I would love to have a guy like Pat Freiermuth. Now, in my defense in that league, I drafted Ertz. I traded Zeke for Dallas Goedert, like I said. And I lost both of those guys in the same week. And because I had those guys, I let go of guys like Gerald Everett and Dalton Schultz earlier in the season. So, I picked up Dalton Schultz at one point because I loved him coming into the season. He was dropped in that league, but I was like, why am I holding 3 tight ends? Threw him to the trash. He got picked up, and lately Dalton Schultz has been pretty solid, at least in this tight end landscape. So I wish I would have had him. I wish I would have drafted a guy like Freiermuth because he's been solid for fantasy lately. Again, tight end is disgusting, but he's had over 70 yards a couple of the last 4 games. If you look at his season-long production, it's been up and down, but for a tight end in fantasy, this is actually pretty good. This is actually not too bad. So in week 14 against the Ravens, I think he's going to be utilized. I think he'll see some targets. And at this disgusting position, I think Freiermuth has a chance to be a tight end 1. So if you have him, unless you have, like I said, a Kelsey, Hockenson, Andrews level tight end, I would play Freiermuth with confidence. Next up, we have rookie tight end of the Denver Broncos, Greg Dulcich. I know it's kind of counterintuitive that I hate this Broncos offense, and they've been so bad for fantasy. It's not even a hate thing. I'm just being honest. They've been horrible. So maybe it's a little risky to have 2 receiving options, but as my starts of the week. But with no Cortland Sutton, those targets should be consolidated a little bit more to Jerry Jeudy and Greg D, where I'm thinking they might be a little bit safer than they normally would be. But really quickly, I saw this little report on Fantasy Pros that Dulcich was used in a wide receiver role recently, and without Cortland Sutton, that definitely could continue against the Chiefs, a game that I think they'll be trailing and we'll have to throw it in. So again, Dulcich is a rookie tight end. I don't know why I said again. This is the first time I'm saying that. But Dulcich is a rookie tight end. Usually rookie tight ends don't do well for fantasy. He got off to a hot start to his rookie debut. Tight end 1 in 3 straight weeks. Had the bye week, and then he kind of disappeared since then. But last week he was the tight end 4. And I'm thinking we see a little bit more of the good Greg D this week against Kansas City in a game where I think he'll be needed. He should. I'm hoping he sees at least 5 targets. I wouldn't be surprised if he sees 8 or 9, like he has a couple games this season. And like I said, tight end is a gross position. So if you need to start, I'd go with Greg D. And then finally, Gerald Everett is my final tight end start of the week. Tight end is a gross position. I'm going to say it for every player for the most part, but you can do worse than Gerald Everett. He's had his moments. That offense is getting healthier, but against the Miami Dolphins with Tua and Tyreek Hill and Waddle if he's 100%. And then on the other side with the Chargers, you got Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Josh Palmer. It could be a high-scoring game. And Gerald Everett, he's their starting tight end, and he's had his weeks. Last week, 5 for 80 against the Raiders. Tight end 6 on the week. He's had his weeks this year. So any of these guys can disappoint any given week just because of the nature of the position. But it doesn't take a lot to be good at tight end. For fantasy, and in week 14, it's a high-scoring game. The Dolphins are actually giving up a decent amount of points. They're a great matchup for tight ends in terms of points given up to the tight end position. The Dolphins are. So when you talk about the potential for a high-scoring game with a lot of passing yards in general and a good matchup, I think Gerald Everett is a nice little streaming option for week 14. That is going to do it for my starts of the week for week 14. If you've made it this far, it would be greatly appreciated if you would drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. Now we're going to transition into the part of the video where we recap my week 13 starts of the week, because I think it's also important to look back at the previous week and see what went well and what didn't go so well. So last week in week 13, my quarterback starts of the week for Justin Herbert, who was the quarterback 7, about 18 points in fantasy against the Raiders. So that was a nice call on my part. And then Trevor Lawrence, he only had about 16 points in fantasy. He was almost a quarterback 1, so it wasn't a great, jaw-dropping performance, but we'll take it, I guess. I mean, it was pretty disappointing, I'm not gonna lie, but a good call on our part was Mike White. I was actually at this game. Vikings were hosting the Minnesota Jets, the New York Jets, and Mike White was lighting them up. I'm surprised he only had 17 points for fantasy. There were a lot of big plays in that game, but Quarterback 9 on the week, Mike White. I mean, that took a lot of courage to make that call, but we really nailed it. And then Jimmy Garoppolo, he did get hurt in this game, so he only threw 4 passes before he got injured. So I feel like you can't really count this one. Then Brock Purdy came in. Where did Brock Purdy finish? Quarterback 17. Okay. I mean, hey. But obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo is now out for the season pretty much. So it is what it is. We don't count that one. It's impossible to predict injury. Aaron Jones, though, against the Bears, I thought he was going to light it up. I had some leagues where I thought about trading Aaron Jones, but I held on to him specifically because I was like, ooh, this week against the Bears, just like earlier this year, he's going to light him up. I believe he was dealing a little bit with some injury, like he was kind of on and off the field. I didn't watch that game, but I think I heard that. Don't quote me on that, but I think that was a thing. So if that was the case, that could explain part of it. And then A.J. Dillon did have a good performance in that game as well. So the process was right. It just wasn't quite the right player. But here was a good player that we made a start of the week was David Montgomery in that same game on the other team for the Bears. He was a running back 1 and half PPR, which is the scoring that I go off of, by the way, half PPR, 14.7 points. So it's solid. Definitely solid. And Travis Etienne, just, I don't know what happened, man. 13 for 54, 3 for 12 through the air, 6 points. You hate to see it. So, was it the best call? I just kind of liked that game to be high scoring, but I mean, the Lions showed up, but Jacksonville, they just couldn't get anything going. So they were trailing in that game, so it makes sense Etienne didn't see a ton of work on the ground. But moving on to wide receiver, Keenan Allen was one of my starts of the week, along with, I said to start Justin Herbert. He's got to throw to someone, and Keenan Allen was just outside of wide receiver 1, literally 0.1 points behind CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver 12. So he was wide receiver 13. 17.8 points. So that was a solid call. What was his stat line? 6 for. So he saw 14 targets. Only caught 6 of them. So he had potential for more. Wow. 6 for 88 and a touchdown. We love that. After that, I said I liked Amon-Ra. I was gonna make him a start of the week this week against the Vikings, but I think at this point he's pretty solidified as an auto start. But last week, he was the wide receiver 2 overall. So 2 touchdowns, 114 yards, 11 catches on 12 targets. So, yeah, he definitely worked out as a start of the week. Zay Jones and Christian Kirk were starts of the week. Zay Jones only had like 1 or 2 catches. I heard he was very close to catching a touchdown in this game, but this was a great matchup. I thought the Jaguars would keep up with the Lions because I thought it'd be a high-scoring game. I don't even know if I should scroll all the way down. Like, where is this guy? Oh, he's somewhere here. But it just didn't work out. He was coming off a big game, saw 7 targets, but 2 for 16. I also said to start Christian Kirk on that same Jaguars team. Not Kirk Merritt. I'm sorry, Kirk, but Christian Kirk. And he worked out. He was wide receiver 19, 13.4 points, 6 for 104 yards. So we're happy about that one. And then finally, I had 2 rookies as wide receiver starts of the week. Garrett Wilson against my Vikings, 20 points. Only the wide receiver 9 with that many points, but he didn't even get in the end zone. And was still the wide receiver 9 on the week, 8 for 162. So, yeah, I was at that game, like I said, and he was making some crazy plays. And then Christian Watson, not Justin Watson, sorry, Justin, but Christian Watson, another rookie, was my start of the week. And he was even better than Garrett Wilson. So the 2 rookies, 6 and 9. Very nice. Christian Watson, 22.9 points. So we will definitely do that. And then at the tight end position, the first guy that was a start of the week for me, I only had 2 that I talked about. The first one was George Kittle, and he was a disappointment. 2 for 22. That's kind of what Kittle is at this point. Sort of boom or bust. Just depends on the game plan. And he was apparently not a focal point of that offense that week. Then Dalton Schultz, they didn't really need him. They won 54-19. Saw 6 targets, only caught 2 for 33. I think he got a couple shots there. We could have had some big plays, but only 4.3 points. But that's kind of tight end for you. It's pretty hit or miss. But yeah, these were the top finishes if you were curious. Bruh, what am I looking at? Look at these tight ends, bro. Noah Fant, Cade Otton. Got Taysom Hill as a tight end 1. Evan Ingram. I almost picked up Ingram in a league, but I didn't. I actually played Foster Moreau over him, I think, in that league. Where's Foster Moreau at? He's way down here. Dang, I should have gone with Ingram. But anyway, sorry I'm rambling. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you guys later. Good luck in week 14. Peace out.